I did nothing. The pavement was his enemy.
In a world overflowing with movies, we need a hero. Someone to separate the bad from the good.
Verbal Diorama. She watches all the movies, from comedy to drama. From the top roll sound, and don't forget the action. She'll watch until the end, and then she'll give you her reaction. Movies you know, movies you don't. Prequels, sequels, remakes, and trivia and outtakes. Movies you know, movies you don't. Interesting stories, all the categories.
Hi everyone, I'm Emma. Welcome to Verbal Diorama, episode 170, Twins. This is the podcast that's all about the history and legacy of movies you know and movies you don't. And as always, a huge hi and welcome to Verbal Diorama. All of you brand new listeners who are joining us for this podcast, welcome back. Regular returning listeners and irregular returning listeners, whichever you are, it's absolutely fine by me. But thank you for being here. Thank you for choosing this podcast. There are a lot of movie podcasts out there. They're all vying for your ears and for your attention. And I'm really happy that you've chosen this one. I love making movie podcasts for people like you to listen to and hopefully find something that you enjoy or find something that you're interested in. Hopefully, fingers crossed. I'm delighted to have you here for the history and legacy of Twins. Tonight is your night, bro. And joining me for this episode... Tonight is your night, bro. Because... oh, yeah, okay.
Sorry, I put you off.
No, that's fine. You weren't expecting me to do that, were you?
No.
Joining me for this episode, for Auguest, this is the final episode of Auguest, are the official twins of this podcast. Because when you think of me hosting Verbal Diorama on my own, it's a podcast about the history and legacy of movies you know and movies you don't, you obviously think of my twin podcast, hosted by four guys making up sequels to movies that don't have them. Clearly, because twins. Instead of getting all four of them on this podcast, which, can you imagine me being surrounded by four men? I mean, yeah, I can, in my mind, in the deepest, darkest depths of my mind. But because we thought maybe four was a bit too much for my poor heart to deal with, we decided to get two. Mostly because the other two didn't read the group chat. Which is not wrong. It's Drew and Matt from Sequel Pitch. Hi Drew, hi Matt. Thanks for being here. And sorry that the other guys didn't get the memo on this.
Yeah, to be fair, Ross did. Ross is busy, but Andy. Yeah, we don't talk about Andy.
Just throwing it out there now. You got the best two. Let's be honest.
Well, I didn't want to say that, but, secretly, I think that's true. Obviously, feel free to tell the listeners a little bit about Sequel Pitch and what you guys do.
You go for it, Matt.
So, yes, Sequel Pitch. Who are we? This is my first time with them. So, hello, Em. So lovely to meet you. Finally. No competition today, hopefully.
I hadn't
This
even
is true.
processed that.
Yeah, this is true. I've been on Sequel Pitch twice, and both of the times, Matt didn't want to be involved. Now, there is a reason why he didn't want to be involved, because he couldn't
I wussed out.
be involved.
I wussed out. No reason. But yes, Sequel Pitch, who are we? We are four friends, four film fanatic friends who watch movies, review them, talk about the good, the bad, and in some cases definitely the ugly. And then we go ahead and pitch sequels, compete for the best, vie for the best. The host that week picks the winner, who then goes on to host the following episode. And yeah, that in a nutshell. We pretend we like each other sometimes on there. Sometimes we show our true colours and rip into each other on there. It's all banter. Banter is a word, right?
Yeah, banter.
Banter.
Let's.
Which, again, is why it's an ideal moment to let the world know that you are my podcast twins, because literally it's like looking into a mirror, looking at our two podcasts. They are pretty much the Arnold Schwarzenegger and Danny DeVito of podcasting.
Indeed.
But I'm not gonna quantify that with a who's who.
Oh, we're
because I think
DeVito.
we know.
We're Vincent.
We'll
There's no
absolutely
question.
take DeVito right there.
We're like shabby, just flying by the seat of our pants, no composure.
Well, but obviously, Verbal Diorama is the perfect specimen fathered by 6 men. Actually, that sounds wrong. Okay, maybe that won't be in the episode. Okay, I'm embarrassing myself now. So, anyway, moving swiftly on. What I was going to say is I've obviously had the pleasure of guesting on Sequel Pitch twice. And honestly, one of my favourite guest appearances was when you let me come on to pitch my sequel to the greatest movie ever made, The Mummy.
Yeah.
Which is a sequel that I've been kind of percolating in my mind for 20 years.
It was epic.
To have the opportunity to come on and to do even I'll admit, it's really bloody good sequel to The Mummy.
It's an epic.
Yeah, I will be forever grateful for that opportunity. I'm pretty certain Universal, they've got my script in their minds somewhere. They must have. But yeah, so you guys are on here to talk about twins. And here's the trailer for twins.
In a secret lab, somewhere in the Western Hemisphere, the perfect human specimen has been born. He has the strength of 10 men and the wisdom of 20. He also has a twin brother.
I have a brother? Oh my goodness, are you looking good?
Arnold Schwarzenegger
Born to be bad.
and Danny DeVito
Way to go, Mom.
are twins.
My name is Julius. I'm your twin brother.
Obviously. The moment I sat down, I thought I was looking into a mirror.
Only their mother can tell them apart. Twins, the new comedy from Ivan Reitman.
Julius. What? Are you allergic to something? You're all swelled up. You look like you're ready to explode. I love it when you hit people. Who are you?
Vincent's brother.
We're twins.
That's right.
Twins, coming this Christmas.
Fraternal twins, Julius and Vincent Benedict, are the results of a secret experiment to make the perfect child using 6 sperm donors. Perfect physical specimen Julius grows to athletic proportions with brains, beauty, and strength in equal measure, whereas Vincent is left with the genetic trash. Vincent is placed in an orphanage while Julius is raised by Professor Werner, one of the scientists involved in the experiment in the South Pacific. Streetwise Vincent, who has become a shady lowlife, is about to be killed by loan sharks when Julius discovers that he has a brother and begins looking for him, and the two unite to find their long-lost mother, who they believe died during childbirth. Let's quickly run through the cast. Arnold Schwarzenegger as Julius Benedict, Danny DeVito as Vincent Benedict, Kelly Preston as Marnie Mason, Chloe Webb as Linda Mason, Bonnie Bartlett as Mary Ann Benedict, David Caruso as Al Greco, Trey Wilson as Beetroot McKinley, and Marshall Bell as Mr. Webster. Twins was written by William Davis, Timothy Harris, William Osborne, and Herschel Weingrod, and directed by Ivan Reitman. So, a bit of a brief production history on Twins because, let's be honest, guest episodes, we don't really have a great deal of time to go through the whole story. But this is a really interesting one because when you think of Arnold Schwarzenegger, you think big, hero, action man. You think of movies like The Terminator, which obviously I covered quite recently on this podcast. You think of Commando. You think of this big hulking guy taking down all the bad guys. And it was a simple pitch that convinced Universal Pictures to take a chance, open its wallet, and launched a new line of comedies as a result. And the pitch was simple. It was Schwarzenegger, DeVito, twins. And it basically came from the fact that Schwarzenegger had inspiration to be a comedy star. So he'd been in The Terminator, And in 1985, he started to think about switching to more comedic roles. He had a conversation with Marvin Davis, the head of Fox Studios, at a charity event. At the time, he was working for Fox on the film Commando, and he started chatting to comedian Milton Berle at the event's dinner. Now, if you're a Friends fan, you'll recall the name Milton Berle from a comment that's made about his manhood by Rachel. And it's just something that's always stuck in my mind personally. So Berle would gradually introduce Schwarzenegger to some of the stars of comedy, and Schwarzenegger would persistently grill Berle about comedy and how comedy worked. And so because he'd obviously rose to fame in The Terminator, he did want to try his hand at comedy, and he thought the time was right for him to have a go. So he went on a skiing holiday to Colorado, as we all do when we're deciding for, a changing career. This was at the end of 1986, and the idea remained in his head. By chance on his skiing holiday, he met up with Ivan Reitman, who's probably most well known for being the director of Ghostbusters, and also the legendary Robin Williams. They were both on a holiday at the same resort. And Ivan Reitman would tell Arnie after an evening of joke-telling, "There's a certain innocence about you that I've never seen come through on the screen, and a certain sense of humour." And Reitman really appreciated Arnold Schwarzenegger's sense of humour. And at the time, he wasn't seen as an actor who had much of a sense of humour because he was a huge, big muscle man. And, well, we know muscle men can be funny, but at the time, he was mostly seen as a huge action star. And so upon the return to California, Ivan Reitman commissioned several writers for a Schwarzenegger starring comedy. One of those ideas was called The Experiment, and it was about mismatched twins. And that was the idea that caught his attention. So Arnold Schwarzenegger was on board with this idea. The name was changed to Twins because of Arnold's Germanic background, because The Experiment, etc. And so together they pitched this idea to Universal. And the important thing to note is that at the time, the deal that they pitched to Universal was a zero-salary deal. The idea was, because this was quite a big gamble for Schwarzenegger's career at this time, they decided that he would make his debut in comedy, they would pitch this deal, they would take no salary up front. This would make it an easy sell to the studio. Now, as it happened, the studio was kind of on board with Arnold Schwarzenegger starring in a comedy anyway. They had faith in him. However, given the choice to pay someone or not pay someone, they chose to not pay someone. And that deal actually paid dividends because it wasn't just Arnold Schwarzenegger that had a deal for zero upfront salary. It was Arnold Schwarzenegger, Danny DeVito, and Ivan Reitman. They all took the same deal. Because of that, and because the movie ended up grossing $111 million off its $15 million production budget, it would mean record salaries for the percentage of profits for all three. So much so that no studio will agree to such a deal ever again because they made so much money. It ended up that 37.5% of the film's revenue was split between the two lead actors and the director. This was a movie that made megabucks for everyone involved. And it does kind of make you question why they didn't make a sequel pretty much immediately. They've been trying to get a sequel off the ground for many, many years. It's never happened. And as it stands right now, it possibly never will happen since the death of Ivan Reitman. It's a very condensed, brief production history for this movie, but I think this one's a really fascinating one because you wouldn't necessarily put Arnold Schwarzenegger in this role, but he's pretty perfect in this role. Danny DeVito is perfect in this role because he's Danny DeVito, and why would he not be? But Drew and Matt, I'm curious as to your personal history with twins and what you guys think of this movie.
Take it, Drew.
Okay. So my total exposure to this movie until the last couple of days was the one clip of it that appears in the YouTube video, which is 10 minutes of Arnie's best movie quotes. And it is the bit where that he pulls the guy off the bike and he's like, "What did you do, man?" "I did nothing. The pavement was his enemy." And that was literally, I knew the premise of the movie and I knew that quote and I knew literally nothing else of this film whatsoever. So I'm very, very glad that I'm here and have had a good excuse to sit down and watch it. I won't go into my thoughts yet. I'll pass over to Matt.
So my experience of the film is slightly older, only slightly though. I was introduced to this due to a parallel in my life circumstances that we'll get more into later, about 12 months ago. And yeah, everyone was like, "Oh, twins, you should watch the film with Arnold Schwarzenegger, Danny DeVito." I was like, "Okay, yeah, I'll add it to the list." Went ahead and watched it over Christmas, found it fascinating and loved it. And then, yeah, when you reached out, Em, and you put forward the idea of doing twins, I was like, absolutely, let's do it. Let's deep dive into this film because there's so much more to it than that's on the surface. And yeah, watching it again, treating myself to it a bit earlier this evening. And yeah, it's just, I don't know what it is about a Schwarzenegger film, but it just kind of gets away with whatever it wants to. And I forgive films with Arnold Schwarzenegger in more than I'll forgive any other movie franchise. He just gets away with things, and I'm like, oh, I shouldn't be laughing, but that was kind of funny. That was kind of funny, Arnie. I'll give you that.
He's a really good comedian.
He is.
And because he just had that persona of being, a huge, hunky action guy. And so many of those guys have tried to go into comedy. If you look at like Sylvester Stallone and Bruce Willis has probably had a bit more success than Stallone has. But they all tried to get into comedy. And Schwarzenegger just kind of nailed it in this movie for me. He's just, I think it's the fact he's so naive and
and nice.
And sweet.
Seeing him play and like a nice guy he is a badass in this film. He still absolutely beats the ever-loving crap out of people, but he is naive. He's just a nice person, and he plays it so well. And it's interesting that Matt says that he forgives a lot because of Schwarzenegger, and I totally agree. Like, on paper, this film feels really tonally off. Like, it's kind of, it feels like it's trying to be a screwball comedy, but it's not quite screwball enough, and so it kind of feels a little bit childish. But then there's some not childish themes in there, and there's some really interesting stuff going on. But Danny DeVito and Arnold Schwarzenegger are both so charismatic and magnetic to watch, and so you do just enjoy it. I just have the annoying voice in my head that is maybe a bit louder than the one in Matt's head that's going, "Oh, this could have been better though." But it is a lot of fun. There are some really good laughs in this movie.
I've seen this movie so many times over the years. I practically grew up watching this movie, and I practically grew up watching Arnold Schwarzenegger movies, but not movies like this, because when I was a kid, me and my brother and my dad, we used to watch movies like Commando.
Yeah.
And obviously that's an 18-rated movie and not suitable for children, but I love that movie so much because that's the movie that I would sit and watch with my dad.
Yeah.
And even now, like, every time I see Arnold Schwarzenegger, every time I watch one of his movies, I think of my dad because they were the movies that we used to watch together. And similarly with Twins as well. That was obviously a more family-friendly movie, and I think my mum was probably a bit more happy for me and my brother to watch something like that over something like Commando. I still have such a fondness for Commando, but I've watched this so many times over the years. It's been a long time since I've seen it. I went out and I picked it up on DVD, and I'm just happy that I've got the DVD of it now, to be honest, because I can watch it whenever. But I agree with what you said, Matt, about that you can kind of forgive certain things because it's Arnie. Because I grew up watching his movies, I have just such an extreme fondness for the man that I will probably sit and watch anything that he does and go, oh, well, the movie's not great, but Arnold's great in it. And yes, what you said, Drew, I agree. This movie is kind of paper thin. Really, there's not much substance to it. There's no science. There's literally zero science in this movie. But it's just, the leads are so charismatic that I personally forgive this movie for so much because it's just so great. It was really great to watch it again, actually.
I think it's interesting to note they did, I know only 15 million sounds quite ridiculous, but, you know, for me, I guess that feels like quite a low production budget, even for the late 80s. You know, we were recently talking about a movie that came out early noughties with a 50 million budget that, good lord,
and
we're not going to talk about it or
twins.
name it on this episode, but crikey, that was a bad movie. And then, yes, they really pulled it off with 15 million. And, you know, I guess that can just about buy some certain sets and certain visual effects that we see in this movie.
Yeah, it was the idea that someone could drive a car on two wheels and just like look like they're having the best time ever doing it as well. Because Arnold Schwarzenegger, the fact that he's like, I can't do an accent, so I'm not going to bother, but he's like, where's your manual? And Vincent's like, what? Like, he's like, your car manual. Like, I need to learn to drive. It's like, since when has a manual for a car ever taught you how to drive that car? Maybe it's different in America, but that's not like that over here. The manual of the car does not tell you how to drive the car. It just doesn't. Because obviously the main reason that I wanted to do this episode was because, you know, like when you have twin towns and like your town twins with like another town in like another country. This is basically what I'm starting to do with Verbal Diorama now. And I'm going to have like twin podcasts all across the world. And so, yeah, you guys are the first twin podcast of Verbal Diorama. And the other reason that we wanted to do this and we thought this was a really good idea is that, Matt, you currently are in a situation with your own Julius and Vincent, with your baby daughters. So,
Correct.
how is that?
Yeah, how is that? It's the most wonderful chaos I've ever lived in with twin daughters. Non-identical, so I do have a Julius and a Vincent. I won't say which one's which because the mother will kill me. But Drew knows. Drew's met them. But no, it's chaos, but the most amazing thing in the world at the same time. And sequel pitch, we had the most wonderful guests coming on in my stead. You even came on twice. You know, you were twinning yourself. We were blessed to have your presence more than once, and I chickened out both times because, especially after hearing your mummy pitch, I wasn't coming back for Ghostbusters. I wasn't ready for that. I was traumatized enough.
Well, to be honest, I think I've traumatised the rest of them as well because I've not been invited back. So they're like, no.
You had to give some
we don't
other
want her
people a
back.
chance, Em. Goodness
You
me.
don't. I will just come back whenever.
Well,
I feel like we need a
50
head-to-head.
years.
it's more. We just kind of we went a bit banana as soon as Matt told us that he was going to have to be taking some paternity leave. We just kind of went, oh my god, and started booking people as much as possible. And it's kind of nice just having it back as the four of us for a bit. But of course you're coming back, Em. We've just got to make sure we find the right film.
Mate, I can take a hint, honestly. So we're an excuse. We're just happy for it to be the four of us.
I'm not happy.
No, it's cool.
You're 2 for 2 on sequel pitch. I'm not standing for that.
No, I know. That's what I'm saying. I want to come back and I want to be 3 for 3, but I want this to be like a really good one. So that's why I'm like, I want to come back. I feel like I need to redeem the Ghostbusters thing because I don't feel like I deserved it. I feel like that was like a pity win. So I feel like although that's technically a win, I need to come back for the third and to make that like proper epic.
Well, I mean, we have no episodes now planned. We planned up until the end of this year, and we have nothing officially scheduled. So we should look at your schedule and find a good crossover episode so that we can release it at the same time.
So we've asked about Julius and Vincent, right? Okay, so
I'm so calling them that from now on when I see them.
I feel like I need to see a picture because I feel like this thread works better with pics kind of situation. And I'm just imagining, you know, like when they show the babies in the film and there's like one huge baby and one tiny baby. I just feel like that's the situation. Like your wife gave birth to like this huge baby and was like, oh my God, I can't do that again. And then he was like, oh no, there's a tiny baby. It's okay.
You know what? Ironically, the physical manifestations and the characteristic manifestations of my daughters are quite polar opposite. So the Julius in physical form is actually absolutely the Vincent in personality. So, that's the true sequel. That's what I would do, is a sequel using my own daughters.
I've kind of already mentioned about how much of a risk this movie was. Does this feel like a risky move for Arnold Schwarzenegger? Sort of looking back.
I find it fascinating that Arnold Schwarzenegger is the one in the driving seat for all of this. Like, I know he'd had a couple of big movies, but I feel like this is a lot of control for him to be the one who's ordering around saying, I want to do a comedy movie, make it happen. He's got people like Reitman and stuff pulling for him. And it's, you don't really hear of an actor with that much pull anymore. Like, maybe once they move into production credits and whatnot for franchises, they get a lot more power and sway. But yeah, I found that quite fascinating, that this guy who'd done a couple of big movies, fair play, but was able to sit there and basically boss around someone with the credentials of Ivan Reitman, and Universal then go, yeah, absolutely, here you go, here's 15 million. Like, he was still a massive risk in Hollywood, I'd say. He was a one-track person, so I don't feel like there was much risk for him and a lot of risk for the people around him, personally.
Yeah.
What do you think, Drew?
It's really hard to say. I guess it was a risk, really. Like, when I was doing some reading up on this, there was, I think it was in the IMDb trivia, and a really anal comment that was like, many people say that this is Arnie's first comedy movie, but actually he did several beforehand, including Hercules, blah, 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 blah. But Hercules wasn't meant to be a comedy. People have just rebranded it as a comedy since. Let's put that out there to begin with. And so, yeah, he was not a comic actor. That was not what audiences were coming out to see him do. And he luckily, he clearly had the ability to do it and to take on that training and do a good job with it. But yeah, if he hadn't, he seems like the kind of guy who maybe would have had them press on regardless of what kind of feedback he was getting about his performance. Maybe that feels fair about Arnie. He's quite a willful chap. So yeah, if this had been a total dumpster fire, it could have properly derailed him. But instead, it got us to like Kindergarten Cop and The Last Action Hero, and really, I genuinely think that more of my my favourite Arnie movies are made up in equal measure with his action movies and his comedies. And it was definitely a risk, and I'm so glad they took the risk.
He's an interesting guy because he was obviously the strongman bodybuilder. He's not the natural fit for any comedy movie, really. Not like your standard kind of everyday comedy.
Yeah.
But I think this works especially well because it's not so much about his delivery and how he delivers lines, even though like his line delivery is like, so straight-laced and so perfect in this movie. It's about the whole mismatched buddy comedy thing. And everyone knows that a good buddy comedy works when it's two people who are very different from each other and they have to learn to get along with each other. And that's exactly what this movie is. Because from the very start of this movie, Vincent Benedict, he's a bit of a dick, isn't he? And he doesn't treat people very well. He's sleeping with some guy's wife. He's cheating on his girlfriend. He meets this guy who claims to be his brother, who bails him out of jail, and then he basically drives off and leaves him.
Yep.
And to be fair, if someone did rock up and he was like 7 foot and was like, I'm your brother, we're twins, you probably would go, yeah, right, mate, have you seen me? But I just think that if this had been something else, if this had been something like Kindergarten Cop or Junior as his first comedy role, I don't think it would have worked quite so well. Maybe Kindergarten Cop, because he was obviously playing a cop and he could kind of be a bit more straight.
Yeah.
But I just think this plays to his literal and figurative strengths. He even manages to get an "I'll be back" in there. And I know he does that in every single role that he's, ever done since The Terminator. But I just love the fact that he manages to get one of those in. And he gets to be, a little bit menacing, but also just this really sweet, charming guy. And there's a lot of facets to the character of Julius and the character of Vincent. And when we're talking about the reality of now, when we're talking about, designer babies are a real thing.
Yeah.
People are going out there and they are designing the perfect child. And Twins was talking about this in 1988. And I know it's fiction, but it's weirdly becoming fact now, which is kind of strange. I know that there's no such thing as like 6 fathers. But, 3-parent IVF is a real thing.
What?
So, yeah, 3-parent IVF. So it's basically 2 eggs and 1 person's sperm. So you get an egg from the mother, you remove the nucleus from the mother's egg, and the donor egg is where the mitochondrial DNA is. You basically take the nucleus from the mother's egg, you put it into the donor egg, you remove the nucleus from the donor egg. You then fertilize that egg with the father's sperm. And this is basically to avoid congenital disease if there's like a certain genetic disease. But the resulting baby, there was a baby born in 2016, and that legally has 3 parents.
Wow.
So it has 2 mothers and 1 father, and genetically has the DNA of 3 people because DNA is in the nucleus, the mitochondrial, and the sperm.
That is bonkers.
Which is phenomenal.
That's mad, isn't it?
Wow.
Science, man.
Yeah.
It's amazing. We're taking steps to creating that perfect child that is Julius Benedict.
Yeah.
I mean,
All
what's
Arnie's
going
all
on in the
day.
world? I just find that so fascinating. When stuff from movies kind of comes true,
Yeah.
like in the near future, it's like, did that idea come from the movie? Which it obviously didn't when we're talking about twins, because I don't think any scientist was looking at twins and going, "Oh, 6 fathers? Yeah, we can do that." Because I genuinely don't think there is a way. I just don't think that's how sperm works. But with eggs, you can obviously take bits out, and that's how they do it. I wanted to ask both of you, do you think that this is Arnold Schwarzenegger's best comedy role out of all of the ones that he's done?
I personally feel like it's up there. Whether it's best, I really like Last Action Hero as well. But for me, what I really like about this movie is, and it's a kind of a feeling I've always had about Arnold Schwarzenegger in comedy movies, is that it sometimes feel like they're laughing at him rather than with him. I feel like he's the butt of the joke with his accent and his build and whatnot. It sometimes just I feel like it's used in cheap humour, where I don't feel like that was the case here. Certainly, his physical stature was used for comedy, but I don't feel like they made him the butt of the jokes. Like, his innocence and his naivety actually played through with quite a bit of, dimensional depth in the character, in the way that he was on the island and whatnot. They didn't kind of just make him what I feel like sometimes they do, where they make him just a little bit two-dimensional and simplified, just to be purely funny because he just doesn't understand. It's like, oh, it's Arnie, he doesn't understand things. Oh, yes, his accent doesn't belong in Hollywood. That's kind of what I feel like some comedy roles do with him. But I don't feel like they did that here, personally.
For me, yeah, it's definitely not. It's not my favourite comedy performance of his, I don't think, and it's not my favourite comedy movie of his, but maybe it's definitely up there with his best performances. A lot of the time, he's one of these actors who can often, as people level at Tom Cruise quite a lot, Tom Cruise just often seems to just play Tom Cruise, and then occasionally he'll do An Edge of Tomorrow or some of his older stuff where he proves that actually he can play a different character and he's good at it. And Arnie, even in some of my favourite comedy roles, Last Action Hero being my absolute favourite, I think that movie is so desperately in need of reevaluation. But he he plays that quite straight. He's kind of the straight man through that. But here he is playing a character who is very different from the man that we know he is in real life, and doing a really good job of inhabiting the role. So, yeah, I would say it's one of his best comedy performances. Not one of my favourites, but one of his best.
It's interesting, actually, that you both mentioned Last Action Hero. That's episode 107 of this podcast, because I do like to plug previous episodes. Last Action Hero is... I agree with what you said, Drew. I think that, to me, that is so underrated because I feel like it came out at the wrong time.
Yes, yeah.
It came out and it was just eclipsed by Jurassic Park, which, I mean, Jurassic Park is going to eclipse something like Last Action Hero. I don't think people really understood what Last Action Hero was actually about.
No.
And yes, it's not a perfect movie. I think that is a movie that does have issues with its plot, so with its script. But for its credentials, you know, the fact that Arnold Schwarzenegger's in it, he's sending up his action hero roles, he's playing a comedy role at the same time. I mean, that movie should have been huge.
Yeah.
And it does deserve reevaluation. It's super fun. And I really do feel like the Arnold Schwarzenegger that we got sort of over his, 30, 40 plus year career, he fully understands who he is in Hollywood and what Hollywood thinks of him and what viewers think of him.
Yeah.
And I think, you know, he's a really smart man and he is fully able to send himself up in such a way that he's not going to damage his career or, you know, the way he's perceived, but he's going to send himself up and sort of show a different side to him. And I think he does that quite successfully in this movie, but I think he does it even better in Last Action Hero because he's been Arnold Schwarzenegger pretty much I know he was because he was born that way, but, you know, like for a Hollywood persona for his career thus far, he was such a huge star in the early 90s. And obviously Twins came out in 88. So he was well on his way to becoming a huge megastar. Like the whole Planet Hollywood thing, when it was like him and Stallone and Bruce Willis, and they basically started an entire chain based on the fact that they were huge action stars. I have just a huge amount of respect for the man and for his career in general because, like I say, he reminds me of my dad in so many ways. Not because my dad looks like Arnold Schwarzenegger or, sorry, Dad, has the muscle mass of Arnold Schwarzenegger, but just because Arnold Schwarzenegger kind of felt a little bit like a second dad because he was always there, you know, like on the TV, like saving his daughter in Commando or whatever. So, yeah, maybe that's why I have such an affinity to him in his movies that, you know, maybe technically he is my second dad, but...
you got 4 more to find.
I know. Is there anything about this movie that you either really didn't like or you don't feel particularly holds up, or maybe you liked when you first saw it and now you kind of look at it and go, I'm not really too keen? Matt?
Thinking about it, again, it falls back to this kind of forgiveness thing, I think. And Danny DeVito has a similar power where you kind of brush things off that DeVito touches, goes, yeah, but he's good though, and you let him off. You know, obviously Vincent's relationship with Linda is... I just feel like Vincent's journey, his arc, kind of is, I'm a dick. I'm such a good guy at the end. Like, and it all comes down to, you know, he's running off with millions of dollars, and he's like, don't come back. Why did you come back, you arsehole? Here's the money. Like, and it's just like, okay. So you've just had your snap turn, and you know you can get away with a snap turn for a character flaw sometimes, but I don't feel like it's a character flaw. I feel like that's a deep-rooted personality trait that he just goes fully on a dime on, and he's just like, now I'm a good guy. Now look, we're brothers. So I think maybe just the Vincent Benedict character, if I'm going to be picky about it, I feel like we could have just juiced him up a bit and fleshed him out a bit. Give him more moments like the ones where they have the conversation about Christmas dinner and the conversation about family. Just lace in a couple more of them moments where we start to really warm to him, because I feel like they're just kind of dripped in and more given to Arnie to kind of show off some and flex some emotional muscle. And Danny DeVito's there to ride along with it, and it just gives his character little moments of glimmer. But yeah, maybe he needed just something bigger. And I know we get the flower scene with Linda, and I know we get the nighttime scene, but then he's like, no, we're not moving in together. So I just kind of don't feel like I fully believe that Vincent is going to become a good guy at the end of this, until you're slapped with it in the face and like, yeah, they've got twins now, and look, they're a happy family and everyone's happy, yay. And then I kind of go, okay, if you say so.
Yeah.
Thinking he's definitely running a mafia underground ring somewhere.
And yeah, for me, it's I kind of, on that, I would want this movie to actually lean into being a bit more adult and being
I mean, it's not. This is not that kind of podcast, Drew. I hate to tell you. I know it sounds like it, listen from the outtakes, but it's not.
But it feels quite, like I said at the beginning, it feels like it's trying to appeal to everyone. And were this to be remade, perhaps, I would really enjoy it if it was a more grown-up comedy, like leaning more into the Pineapple Express of it all, just a little more absurdity, a little more kind of grown-up situations. I don't know. It's something. It's really difficult to put my finger on. Sorry, I'm rambling about this point, but
It's fine.
It feels like it's that funny Ivan Reitman energy where his movies feel like they're family friendly, even though they're actually kind of not. Like Ghostbusters is not really a film for kids. Kids can watch it and they don't get the grown-up stuff in Ghostbusters, but it's there. Where this, I maybe it was that I didn't enjoy the stuff that was there for the grown-ups as much as in other of his movies. But yeah, it just, as a whole, the movie didn't land entirely for me outside of the two leads.
I think on that, and that kind of feel of not knowing what age rating this movie is type thing, like, I found one of the scenes that both made me laugh and then made me kind of go, where the hell did that come from? Was the bit where he picks up the Playboy magazine, and it's the first time that he meets, what's her name, Callie Preston, Marnie, and you know, he's just looking at it and there's a topless woman, and then he looks, it's like, I didn't know that was in there. And she's like, where have you been, living on a rock? And it's like, I get where the humour is in it, but it's like, there's nothing. Here's some boobs. Nothing.
I mean, yeah, it's to appeal to a certain audience, isn't it?
Oh, yeah.
And I suppose they do want to appeal to the kind of guys who would go and see an Arnie movie.
Indeed, exactly.
And I think that's probably why the two female leads, Marnie and Linda, they're not really given much to do.
No.
They're not, they're
No,
not
they are
given
not.
like any character development. They're not really given much to say. They're just like there to look really pretty
Yeah.
and to hang off each twin's arm. And Linda's going out with Vincent. And then, of course, because Marnie's there and Julius is there, well, they have to end up together because the laws of movie making say that they do. And the roles for women in this movie are basically non-existent. They might as well not be there,
Yeah.
other than to breed and produce the twins at the end, which when we just before we started recording, I had a bit of an epiphany about, because if you're twins and you marry siblings, then technically your twin children are more than cousins. So they're almost full siblings, which is weird. It's just, like, if you think about the science of this movie and the logistics of this movie, your brain will start to hurt
Yeah.
as to how this all makes sense. It really doesn't make sense. But just going back to one thing that I feel like really does not age very well at all, and the movie really skips over it. And what's worse, the movie blames the wrong person as well. So Julius was sent off to live on this beautiful desert island. You've got this whole nature versus nurture argument, you know, this theory, which I really like. They don't really talk about it at all. The idea of separating two twins, having them lead different lives and find out, you know, what they turn into. Matt, let us know if you're willing to let Julius and Vincent take part in this experiment.
This has been done, and there is some. I was finding something.
Oh, there is.
And it's terrifying. It's really messed up what they did with those parents. So sorry,
Three Identical Strangers, it's called. It's a documentary about triplets.
It's amazing.
But yeah, it's you know, tragic and really weird what happens in that story. But
sorry, I brought the tone down there,
No,
didn't
no,
I?
no,
We can do it with Julius and
it's cool.
Vincent. Let's do it.
It's cool. So yeah, you had Julius living on this beautiful desert island, and then they say, well, you know, Vincent, he was sent to an orphanage in Los Angeles. And then they mention, but they completely gloss over, because they were like, oh, he shamed Sister Mary someone or other. I don't know. Let's call her Sister Mary Clarence, because Sister Act. Sister Mary Clarence, he shamed her, and she had to leave the convent. But really, Sister Mary Clarence was the adult.
Yeah, raped a child.
Sexually assaulted a minor. This movie is like, oh, Vincent is so bad. You know, he shamed a poor nun. What?
That little rascal.
Like
12.
Yeah, he literally says he was 12. He verbatim says, I was 12 when they're talking about their first times. And just like, and they're just like, yeah, this is fine. He's like, yeah, he's the baddie. He's the sort of bad egg. So we can normalize that. Sure, like, it was a different time. It was the year I was born.
Literally such a different time in the 80s. Those nuns, what were they like in the 80s? They were going around doing all sorts of crazy stuff. I found it very strange that the movie just kind of skipped over that. And that was like, oh, well, this is the reason why Vincent's a scumbag. And it's like, well, actually, if a 12-year-old boy is molested by his pretty much teacher/parent figure, then yeah, maybe he will grow up to be an absolute scumbag, you know?
But the movie, I felt like the movie was kind of trying to say that he seduced her as well. Like, they're trying to, but it doesn't, like, yeah.
Just doesn't land right.
No, it just does not.
It really doesn't.
It just doesn't.
It really doesn't. I think we should probably move on from
quick.
nuns
quick,
molesting young boys. So, as I mentioned at the start, there was a proposed sequel. It's been talked about for so many years. I feel like this is one of those movies that has been talked about for so long, and it's just never materialised. Originally, it was going to be Eddie Murphy as a third brother, as the movie was going to be called Triplets. Kind of still is, planned to be called Triplets. Then it was all reworked and Tracy Morgan was going to be the triplet brother. And they'd planned to start filming at the start of this year. And then in February of this year, Ivan Reitman passed away. And so since his death, Triplets has essentially, as far as I can see, been put on hold. I don't think we're ever going to see a sequel to this movie.
No.
But considering you guys are kind of the kings of sequels, I've been curious as to what you think the sequel to this movie could be. Because basically, your podcast, you pitch sequels.
We do.
So I realise I'm putting you guys on the spot a little bit here. But do you have any ideas of what the sequel to this movie could be?
I could throw something on the fly and then throw it over to Joe after, and we'll have a fight over who's his best. No, we won't. We won't take over that much. What would I do? We kind of had a joke about it, had a laugh about it when we were talking about the episode. You know, the end of Twins gives you the perfect platform for a sequel in so many ways. You know, the twins have twin kids each, so there's 4 the next generation sat around as babies. Very conveniently, 1988 to 2022, that's, 34 years. They're the perfect age to get into an action movie. I would have DeVito and Schwarzenegger kidnapped by a medical testing facility that basically want to extrapolate Schwarzenegger and they want to kind of see what they did wrong with DeVito. They're all locked down. It's down to the four twins to, I don't know whether Schwarzenegger's twins have the same genetics as him, or, you know, we'd dive in. Maybe they four of them balance out. They would have to go and basically save their dads with all sorts of hijinxes, and they would tap into their psychic powers. It turns out all four of them are psychically interconnected.
Oh, they have
Maybe
to be.
lean a bit heavier on the psychic connection and what they can do when the four of them channel their mind into one thought. Maybe
This
it
is
blows
becoming
doors
X-Men.
off, and it's kind of starts becoming a bit kind of chronically, maybe, I don't know. But ultimately, yeah, it's a tale of saving their dads, and then when they get there, maybe something like Schwarzenegger's just sat there and he saved himself and DeVito ages earlier, and he was just like, yeah, I'm still the king of action. I don't know, maybe it was a test. We can play with it. I'll just bring the pitch, not the script, as I say.
There it is.
But, you know, throwing in the plugs, throwing in the taglines.
Very good. I mean, I have to say, I liked where it started, you know, with the whole they've got to save their dads. But then I love that it kind of turned into a superhero, mutant powers thing. You mentioned Chronicle, you know, the idea that the twins could have psychic powers. I'm happy with that. Drew, can you match Matt's excellent pitch for his twin sequel?
Matt has touched on a few things that I was definitely planning on following up. What I was envisaging was all four of their twins. The movie picks up now. All four of the twins are all about to become parents of twins. Like whether they are all four of them at the same time. Like it's because they've done the same thing. So it's clearly something's happening, and they are psychically linked. And something like if like Danny DeVito ends up at the hospital having to try and help, like having to act as a midwife for the girls who are giving birth, and then Arnie is with the guys, and they went on a hunting trip and they've got stranded in the wilderness and they're desperately trying to get back in time for the birth, but they're all screaming at each other through their ESP all through the movie. So there's constant dialogue, but like Arnie's fighting a bear and Danny DeVito's trying to help his daughter give birth, and they're like shouting at each other, and yeah, just utter chaos.
And at the end, you have the Umbrella Academy, right?
At the end, it turns out actually it's not twins; it's all quadruplets, and like all, and the family.
Oh
the
my
family
God.
keeps multiplying, and then the end credit scene implies that they just kept multiplying and took over the world and ended humanity.
So basically, your movie, Drew, essentially fixes the birth rate crisis.
Very
Because
much
they're
so.
saying, aren't they, that not enough children are being born. And what you're saying is that the twins are each going to have quads.
Yep. And then
I can't, what is that, like 16 babies?
yep,
Yeah, 16 babies. And those babies are what? Going to have like
16.
octuplets?
yeah.
Oh my God.
4, 8, 16, 32, 64.
Oh my God.
It's like
Literally.
it's like the grains of
Matt's
rice
face.
thing on the chessboard.
Matt's face is amazing because obviously he lives with two babies. I think the idea of like doubling those two babies, I think, is giving him like a brain hemorrhage or something. So-
I'm sweating. I'm starting to actually sweat. The anxiety levels have just peaked.
I mean, to be honest, I'm not here to judge your pitches, thankfully. But to be perfectly honest, I think Drew's basically his pitches just destroyed us all. So I'm not quite sure how to take that. But yeah, so basically that's what you guys do. You pitch often very extravagant and wild sequels
Yeah.
to movies. So yeah, that's a good ad
Thank you.
for your own podcast there.
To put an asterisk, we do usually spend a little bit more time
Yeah, just a bit.
polishing, just a little bit more time polishing those pitches before we throw them out like that. However, I feel like we could just improv the odd episode from now and again. I feel Drew and I have just shown.
See, we keep saying we
scary.
should do complete off the cuff episodes, and I think we need to. This is just a proof of concept that actually we should bloody do it.
Do you know what would be a really good idea? It's just kind of come to my head. You know, like, say, for example, one of you goes on social media and asks for suggestions for movies to pitch. And that one person basically takes all those ideas and, you know, puts them on pieces of paper and just kind of folds them up, puts it in a box. And then for the episode, say like for your 100th episode or something, for example, you could then take literally off the cuff, it'll just have like a piece of paper with Dave suggests, I don't know, twins. There you go, that's good. Dave suggests twins. And then kind of off the cuff, you have to think of it. That could be like, I don't know, some landmark episode. I think that'd be really fun just to kind of hear really off the cuff stuff.
You know what, Em? We spent the first year of our podcast desperately asking people to contact us and suggest movies, and about 3 people did. So if your listeners are more accommodating and want to send us a bunch of suggestions for what we should do for episode 100, we will happily take inspiration from your listeners rather than ours, because ours don't seem to care.
Well, you know, I mean, I've got 50 movies that I could send you like right now.
Yeah.
But, you know, I'm good at ideas. I'm not so good at kind of following through with the ideas, but I'm good with ideas.
Well, we'll credit you with it. If we do it, we'll give you a shout out.
It's probably a really good idea to kind of start to wind things up. So I guess we'll just kind of finish it all off. I haven't done a Keanu reference for it, so I need to try and think of one. Because he wasn't really doing much in 1988. This was like before Bill and Ted, and it was before Parenthood.
Yeah.
He was doing stuff, but nothing I've seen. So I don't know what I'm going to do. And he doesn't have a twin. So not that I'm aware of. And if he does, I might like that twins number. So yeah, this is the first episode that I've ever done with 2 guests. I thought it would be like quite chaotic. You know, a bit like Matt's life, trying to deal with 2 slightly small people. But this has actually been a lot of fun, and it's not been as chaotic as I thought it would be.
Yeah, I think we've done a good job.
Which is great. Yeah, I've done an awesome job. So yeah, thank you so much.
No, thank you.
Guys, for taking the time to come on.
It's been amazing.
Yeah, it has been.
It's good because I've been able to, you know, scout out my competition now for when we get you back. I know what I'm ready for now. You caught the guys off guard, but I'm ready for you. I've seen you.
Nah, you don't stand a chance against me.
I don't.
So yeah, Drew and Matt, thank you so much for taking the time to be on Verbal Diorama. Please, would you take a moment to let everyone listening know where they can find Sequel Pitch and how they can get in touch with you if they've got any ideas for movies that they might want you to talk about?
Absolutely, yeah. You'll find us. We are at Sequel Pitch on pretty much every social. You can hit us up on any podcast listening service. Sequel Pitch. Check us out, www.sequelpitch.co.uk. I believe it's still .co.uk for now.
Yeah.
And yeah, if you want to hear the amazing Em, check out episode 37. Is the one she was talking about with the mummy. If you don't want to listen to us at the beginning, we'll drop a timestamp or something where you can just listen in. I think she's the first pitch, so come and listen to Em's amazing pitch. If you want to hear the rest of us waffle on after, carry on listening. But no, she's guested twice, and Ghostbusters Afterlife was the other one. So do come and listen to the wonderful Em smashing her pitches and really putting the boys to the wall, I think, on the mummy episode in particular. So.
Oh, well, you know, sorry to be the I think you'll find person, but it wasn't Afterlife. It was the 2016.
Oh, was it?
Ghostbusters.
Oh, I was busy.
You were busy.
Yeah, you weren't even there. Why are you even referencing episodes where you weren't even there? You couldn't be bothered to turn up.
That's the truth. That's the truth. I was just sat there with my feet up playing PlayStation or something while you guys were working hard.
Well, your poor wife was dealing with Julius and Vincent.
Yep.
Yeah. Huge thanks to Drew and Matt for joining me for this episode on Twins, and to all of the guests of Auguest, to Gally, Andy and Jack, as well as Drew and Matt. Having guests on Verbal Diorama is a bit different to the normal schedule, but it's been amazing to have these episodes, to speak to these fantastic human beings, and also to have a little time off over August to, you know, do non-podcasty things. But huge thank you to all of them, and most of all, thank you for listening. because as always, I would love to hear your thoughts on twins. If you do want to support this podcast, you can do so without paying a single penny. You can leave a rating or review wherever you found this podcast. You can retweet or like posts on social media. I am at Verbal Diorama on Twitter, Facebook, Instagram, and Letterboxd. Or you could simply tell your friends and family about this podcast and about the previous 169 episodes of this podcast. The next episode, so I'm going to be doing sequel timber again. And basically what that means is it's going to be a month of sequels to episodes that I've already done. So movies that I've done in the past that have a sequel, I'm going to be doing the sequels. And there's some genuinely amazing sequels coming to sequel timber. Starts in earnest next week. But before it does, there's the annual birthday episode to consider. And it's a sort of unofficial start to sequel timber. So next Thursday, sequel timber is starting with one of the greatest superhero sequels of all time, Spider-Man 2. You'll remember I covered Spider-Man in May. But the day before that episode comes out is my birthday. And so for the past 3 years on my birthday, I've brought out a special episode. And so I'm finally going to do an episode on one of the most derided sequels of all time, but one that I think is actually better than its predecessor, just in time for many kids to go back to school again. For my birthday, I'm bringing out an episode on Grease 2. And all I'm going to say is, let's do it for this podcast. You'll get that if you ever watched Grease 2, but you should watch Grease 2 because it's really great. And if you want to do it for this podcast too, you can join the Patreon. You can get early episodes, access to the schedule, freebies, and also the sound knowledge that you're making this podcast ever so slightly better. You also get swears on episodes as well, but the main feed is always going to be family friendly and suitable for all ages. If you are interested, it's verbaldiorama.com/Patreon. And as always, a huge thank you to the patrons of Verbal Diorama: Simon E, Sade, Claudia, Simon B, Laurel, Derek, Vern, Christine, Kat, Andy, Mike, Griff, Luke, Emily, Michael, Scott, Brendan, Ian M, Lisa, Sam, Will, Jack, Dave, Chris, Stewart, Ian D, Jason, Sunny, Drew, Nicholas, Zoe, Kev, Pete, Heather, and a huge welcome to brand new patron Danny, who joined us this week. Thank you so much for joining the Patreon, Danny. I'm so glad to have you here with us because we all know what the first rule of a crisis situation is. It's joining the Patreon, of course. I have a merch store, it's verbaldiorama.com/merch. You can get in touch with me. You can say hi. You can give me feedback or suggestions, verbaldiorama@gmail.com. Or you can pop over to our website, which is verbaldiorama.com. And I'm also still doing bits of filmstories.co.uk. I write for the magazine. I write for articles online as well. So you can pop to the website, you can order magazines, and you can also see the things that I write online. And finally, do a song. Drew loves to sing.
Yeah.
Oh, yeah, you can be canned from Moana. You smash Moana. You might as well do this now, mate. I'm going to sit back. You got this one.
Take out the papers and the trash, or you don't get no spending cash. If you don't stop the culture floor, you ain't gonna rock and roll no more. Yuckity yuck.
Bye.
Movies you know, movies you don't. Prequels, sequels, remakes, and trivia and updates. Movies you know, movies you don't. Interesting stories for the categories.
It's the most wonderful chaos I've ever lived in. On the note of Julius and Vincent.
Sorry. Carrie.
Drew's dog did not like your answer.
No, I won't talk bad of my children
Right,
anymore.
there we go. Em's back, so she'll be quiet now. Sorry about that.
That's all right. I'll put that in outtakes.
Oh, stupid dog. Right. I'm back. Hello, sorry. Matt, you were saying something about beautiful chaos?
Yeah.
You see, I've never done two guys before. Again, with the innuendo.
The outtakes for
so-
this episode are going to be brilliant.
Patreon exclusive. Oh. And I did just make a joke about premature ejaculation before you got here as well, Drew.
Oh,
so,
marvellous.
so
Just shove 6 men's deposits in a blender and just go and just
Go to town.
inject a bit. It might work. I bet no serious scientist has ever entertained even trying that, and it might work. That's all I'm saying.
I
I
personally
mean, I
feel
think there's a strong possibility.
Maybe let's cut this, but maybe we'll see. I won't be. I'll be fine if you leave it in. But also that maybe just. I'm a little bit ashamed of myself for.
Just, you're putting all these visions into my head that I really don't want on a Wednesday evening, I'll be honest. Literally, that's the last thing I want in my blender. Oh, God, what's wrong with me? Why is everything an innuendo?
All I want in my
Seriously.
blender is bananas. Ooh. Ooh.
And cucumber.
oh, not together.
Actually,
not together.
I prefer
Oh.
marrow. Oh, God. Oh, God, what is this turning into?
Oh, I'm so
this
sorry.
is literally going to be like a 5-minute episode with like 1 hour's worth of outtakes.
Oh,
It's fun though.
oh yeah.